Hi, my name is Zam. I'm a high school student and a certified ethical hacker. In today's interconnected world, the Internet of Things promises convenience and innovation, from smart fridges that tell you when you're out of milk to connected light bulbs that adjust to your mood. The future seems right at our fingertips. But what happens when these devices, which were designed to make our life easier, becomes the stuff of nightmares? Scary situations, like unknown entities watching your every move through home security cameras, or the police accusing you of criminal activity due to cybercriminals using your device's bandwidth, isn't just the stuff of spy movies and horror films, it happens in real life. Every day, more objects around us become smart. However, this intelligence comes with vulnerability. Many IoT devices, Internet of Things devices, are shipped with default passwords, open ports, and outdated firmware. And these oversights can turn smart devices into pathways for cyber intruders. By the end of 2023, the number of active IoT devices reached over 16 billion devices. And this is a massive number of devices, of which 77% are estimated to still use default passwords. And this gives attackers a huge networks of targets because if these devices aren't updated regularly, they can be vulnerable to critical vulnerabilities with the potential to cause massive amounts of damage. Some of these vulnerabilities are things like man in the middle attacks, where attackers can leverage connections to eavesdrop in middle of your data traffic from one point to another and steal personal or financial information. Other common vulnerabilities, like code injection attacks, are used to access databases and access your information. And unfortunately, they are quite common because they're quite easy to do in these IoT device vulnerabilities. These devices are especially vulnerable to any malware that is capable of adding devices to botnets. Botnets are large systems and webs of computers that have all been hacked, and they all share the same purpose. Let's say to create a distributed denial of service attack, where all these computers are zombies and they are all listening to one head computer, and that's controlled by a hacker. And all these computers are leveraged to push out an attack that one computer wouldn't be able to do by itself. So it takes all these infected computers and uses it for its own attack. And so once these devices, like these IoT devices, are added into the botnet, the sheer number of unprotected connected devices that are on the market can be all used to leverage these large cybersecurity attacks. So let's go over these vulnerabilities that IoT devices face. So the first one is weak or hard-coded passwords. So these are passwords. These passwords provide vulnerabilities that are the most frequent methods of attacks used to compromise these IoT devices. So these weak and reused passwords are short or easy to guess and are make it really simple for attackers to crack your password and access your stuff. And they could then be used to compromise other devices on the network and launch large-scale attacks. The second is insecure networks. Insecure networks make it easy for cybercriminals to exploit weaknesses in protocols and services that run on these IoT devices. And once they've exploited a network, attackers can breach confidential information all over the network through all of these IoT devices. And these insecure networks can also be susceptible to man in the middle attacks, which steal these credentials and authentication in part of the broader cyber attack by sitting in the middle of all the communication and just picking off whatever data it can find within the stream. The third vulnerability is insecure ecosystem interfaces. So these are application programming interfaces, or APIs, such as mobile or web applications. And these are weak applications in an ecosystem like iOS or Windows that can allow attackers to compromise a device. And organizations have to implement authentication and authorization processes to validate users and protect their cloud and mobile interfaces and applications. And practical identity tools could help servers to differentiate valid devices from malicious users. The fourth vulnerability is insecure update mechanisms. So devices need to update, and some update mechanisms could be malicious or unauthorized code or firmware that is it's a Trojan horse, right? It's pretending to be your updating system for your device, but really it's downloading data. So these corrupt updates can compromise IoT devices, and they could be extremely harmful for organizations in, let's say, the energy sector, healthcare, or industrial sectors. So these updates need to be secure and encrypted channels, and the software has to be validated and approved by the official company. The fifth vulnerability is insecure or outdated components. So IoT ecosystems can be compromised by code and software vulnerabilities on legacy systems. So these outdated components, such as that might use like open source code or third-party software, can lead to pretty big vulnerabilities. Why? Because they're not being constantly updated and patched and secured. The sixth vulnerability is lack of proper privacy protection. So IoT devices collect personal data that organizations need to securely store and process to comply with various data privacy regulations. Failing to protect this data can lead to fines, a loss of reputation, loss of business, and failure to implement sufficient security can lead to data leaks and jeopardize user privacy. The seventh vulnerability is insecure data transfer and storage. Data that IoT devices receive and transit across networks needs to be secure and restricted from unauthorized users. This is critical to maintaining integrity and the reliability of IoT applications and organizations' in decision-making processes. The eighth vulnerability is improper device management. Failing to manage devices properly throughout their life cycles leaves them open to vulnerabilities and exploitation, even if they're no longer in use. And businesses need to understand that their assets and data are connected to their network, and they need to manage them properly once they are given to users. Unauthorized or inactive devices can provide attackers with access to corporate networks and enable them to steal or intercept sensitive data. And this makes the discovery and identification of all the IoT devices out there crucial to monitor and protect these devices. The ninth vulnerability is insecure default settings. So IoT devices, just like all your other personal devices, ship with default settings that make it really simple and easy to set up. But however, these default settings are insecure, and it makes it really, really easy for attackers to breach. Because if you want to be able to completely control your or your device easily with default settings, that means your attacker with the same default settings can also really, really easily control your devices. So once you get a device, you have to make sure to change the default passwords, such as your Wi-Fi router or your home or your IoT device home manager, or just all the different cameras, fridges, whatever you have in your house. The 10th and final vulnerability is a lack of physical hardening. So IoT devices can be deployed in remote environments instead of controlled situations, and that can make them easy to manage, but this also makes it easy for attackers to target and disrupt or manipulate and sabotage these devices. So how do we mitigate all these risks? You have to change default passwords, you have to update firmware regularly, you have to use secure networks, you have to consider what permissions your devices has onto your network. You should use firewalls or VPNs to protect your devices and block access to hidden protocols. So look, your fridge and your thermostat might be listening in on you, but there's just as much risk in your computer and in your phone that you use daily. So check out the rest of my channel to learn more about risks that threaten your devices. And before you do that, don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you for your time, and thank you for watching.